need to share sound. Okay, so there should be here, you should be seeing some slides here. Is that right? Have you got
Yep, we're seeing your slides now.
Great, great. Yeah, so just, yeah, as I said at the beginning, some of you just arrived. It really felt like I was just like, I quite enjoyed making this little mini presentation because I was picking some of my favorite photographs out as if I wanted to show you them to you, like holiday snaps and things. But I just wanted to sort of like tell it like a story and just take you through the whole process of these last few months, which have been quite incredible and have led me to sort of realize that there is this opportunity to do something quite special, which is to build a story, to build stories with a community of readers. You know, we're kind of used to sort of asking our network for help when we're writing stories or getting ideas for projects and things like that. But I don't know whether it's that common to sort of, for a writer of stories, to ask their readers how they want to be involved, you know, what they want to happen. And that's the kind of thing that spring to mind when I was in Mongolia, was there's a lot of potential there to sort of involve the reader in the making of these stories, basically, of the Botra stories, let's say. And so that's what I really wanted to talk about, and just to go through it just a little bit and start, basically with what Paul mentioned, the Meet the Author series, which this is, I think, one of the later ones. I think Andy was present at this one as well. And basically, there was, I was with Egghead. I came with Egghead, the first ever Meet the Author session, which I think was maybe it was in 2021 or something, like maybe 21. I'm not sure exactly. But it was an incredible experience. I spent an hour with readers in Mongolia. There's so many questions, and I'm used to getting questions about Egghead, the story which is the most popular story I've written, and talking about bullying, because the story of Egghead, if you've never read it, is about a young boy who was bullied at school in the 1970s, and it's his story. It's autobiographical. It's my story as well. And this boy has an imaginary friend called Andrew, who helps him to get through the whole experience of bullying. And so I've been traveling around with this story, or either virtually or face-to-face meetings with schools in this country, in Italy, but also other parts of the world for many years. So it's something I'm quite used to. I'm used to the kind of questions that are asked and about the story. But this meeting, there was a kind of an energy, there was a special kind of energy I felt in the meeting. The questions, some of them were a bit different. It was the level of enthusiasm which really struck me, with an engagement in the story when we were talking about Egghead. And so we had another one. We had I think two. It was two meetings we had. So I've gone on. It was two meetings we had. And that kind of was when I decided, I think, okay, one day I want to go to Mongolia. I want to see this for myself. I want to feel in front of this, feel this energy in the classroom. And then some months later, after this meeting, and the presenter who you see there, who can be known as NT, as we said just before the meeting began, it's difficult to pronounce her name, but very kindly she gives us the chance to sort of, we call her NT. And she came to me with an idea to make stories for a reading marathon. Lingos have developed an app which can be used by kids to read the stories on their devices, basically. And Entia made this proposal, and Noika as well, to write 21 stories. He said, "Can we be 21 short stories?" And I said to Entia, I said, I don't have like 21 stories, you know, I'd have to write them from scratch, like in 2 months. And that kind of crazy part of me that likes a challenge accepted it. I thought, let's do it, you know. So I thought, can I do it? Can I write 21 short stories in 2 months? Well, these are the stories. And I managed to do it. I don't know how I managed to do it. You can see the first story there is the story I'm going to tell you about a little bit, Bothra's Big Question. But there are 20 other stories as well. I didn't really have time to actually polish these stories because I was doing an average of a story for every 1.5 days or something like that. But it was an incredible process, something I've never experienced before, because it was like I would start one story, like let's say the little girl with the violin. And then as I'm writing that, I would get an idea for another story. And so I would switch to that story and just start it because I was frightened of losing it. You know how you get ideas, and then if you don't act on it immediately, you can lose that idea. You think, I'm never going to forget this idea. It's a powerful idea. I'm never going to forget it. So, and then you forget it. So you have to write it down. So I started to write the second story. And then as I'm writing the second one, an idea for a third one would come. And so there were periods when I would have 4 stories all kind of running like, it was like taps being turned on. And I was frightened of turning the taps off. So I'd be working on 3 or 4 stories. Inevitably, with this kind of process, the stories are not going to be perfect and polished. They're going to be like big holes in them. They're going to be things that I want to change. But I thought, well, that's okay. I can change them when I get after the reading marathon, as long as they're acceptable. I can perfect them. And so I managed to get to the end of this process, which, was a big achievement personally for me to be able to do this. Because I thought, now I've got 21 short stories, but these are also potentially longer stories. But as you can see, Bothra's Big Question was the first one I wrote because I wanted to write a story that actually spoke directly to the reader in Mongolia. I wanted a Mongolian character. And so how can I do that? I know nothing about Mongolia. It would be an insult to pretend that I do. So I had to put this little girl in Italy. And I had to make maybe a situation where she lives in Italy with her family. She knows Italy better than Mongolia because she moved when she was little. That's her backstory. So she can then talk about Mongolia in a kind of fuzzy way. And that's the way I can do it. So that's what I did. And I started writing Bothra. It was the first story. And I couldn't put it down. I just kept writing all day. I started at 8 in the morning and finished at 8 in the evening. And I was almost done with this story, 8 chapters. And I finished it off in the morning and it was there. And then I went on to the next one. And that was it. I thought, well, when I get back to the story, then I'll be able to sort of polish it, to grade it properly, to make it into something necessary if I think it's a good idea. Then I went so basically after finishing this marathon, make a jump in time, I went to Vietnam before, as I was mentioning to you just before we started. I went to Vietnam before I went to Mongolia. So I spent 9 days in Vietnam doing a kind of reading roadshow with my partner in crime in this, with my colleague, Yul, who came to the came to the conference in Bali, because we have a group called Reading Across the Sky, which is kind of every week we meet, teachers and students meet, and we do kind of activities. We do singing, drawing, and then a storytelling moment. We do every online. And so I met her in Vietnam. And these are like some of the things that we do together, some of the events that we've held in all different places around the world. And last meeting we had, I think it was the last meeting, we had 4 continents involved in this meeting. And when I went to Vietnam, I started this idea we traveled around in a minibus. There are about 30 of us doing a kind of reading roadshow, going to different schools, reading Egghead, the sequel to Egghead the movie, but also other stories as well, reading to each other, reading on our own, reading to kids in schools. All the kids here were readers to other kids. And so we had this kind of very spontaneous moment, this event where we would travel around central Vietnam, basically. Not it was in the rural area of Vietnam, where the schools are lots of kids are homeschooled, where the communication is difficult. The roads are quite difficult, connections from one place to another, and we traveled around. And then I went to Bali, and this is the photo that represents for me the excitement of going to a place like Bali. Unbelievable when I saw this and this site here. And so I went to Bali. And who should I meet in Bali? The first couple I met, really, the first people I met when I was sitting in the foyer, in came Sumia and Oika from Lingos, and armed with these booklets, basically with Bothro's Big Question. They'd made the reading marathon, but they decided for the first story, Bothro's Big Question, that it would become like a physical thing. They would give a physical book, and then they would read the other stories on the app. And so suddenly I found myself I don't think my face really communicates the excitement I felt there as seeing this Bothro come to life in a way. And they gave me also a doll. This is a terrible photograph I made of Bothro, not very respectful. I should have sat her up or something. She looks a bit disheveled there, but it uncannily looks like Bothro, and someone that spent a lot of time and energy into making this doll. And I've got it on my bookshelf, proudly sitting on my bookshelf right now. So, this made me think. So basically, we distributed, quite a lot of these booklets to the people who came to the storytelling workshop that I did. I think Jackie was there, if I'm not mistaken, at that workshop about storytelling. And okay, there's one person, that basic principle of story, she's got the story upside down there on the left. That's maybe something. But I'm sure she had it the right way up when she read it. But still, again, all the time I was thinking, I want to get my hands on this book, grade it properly, work on it a bit more, because it's now a physical entity. I want to make it into something that will be not too much of a challenge. I hadn't really looked at it with that eye that as writers of graded readers we have to, because writing a graded reader, as I often say, is possibly the most intimate relationship you can have with a reader, because you cannot afford to lose the reader. You cannot do fancy footwork, and you've got to keep that reader with you, make sure that they can follow and get to the end. So I was desperate to get my hands on this story again, so that I could just make sure that the reader that I had in mind would be able to follow me. Basically, that was my main concern as I'm standing there. And so I thought, well, I've got to get to know Bothro a little bit. And so my next, when I got back from Indonesia, not soon afterwards, I was already thinking about how to get to Mongolia, or when to go there, and what to do. And I knew that then when going there would help me in this whole process of regrading the story, just adding bits to it and everything. So as well as wanting to go there on a personal level, to go to Mongolia to just feel some of this energy that there is, it was also like thinking I can make Bothro better if I go there. It would help me in some way. And this is some of the things that Lingos distribute when they gave the story out to kids in schools. And so I met students, and I met a lot of students. I mean, this is just to give you an idea of the number that we're dealing with here, and the level of enthusiasm, the questions, getting from, I said that one day we went to 6 schools. Well, that was really difficult, because it was difficult to get away from one school. Every school, when we finished, there were questions, there were things, there were selfies, there were autographs, there were all kinds of things going on. And so it was difficult to sort of say goodbye, basically. And always there were this kind of circle that was basically was encircled very often with questions, peppered with questions, requests, questions like, why did you choose to write a story about a Mongolian girl? Was the most common question, you know. And that was one of the, so basically, if I just like take you through, this was made by Lingors, the little summary of what I did. I went to 2 schools on the first day. This is literally when I got off the plane and I was going to schools. And as Paul mentioned, the traffic is quite a challenge. So getting from one place to the next is not as easy as it sounds. And here you can see they're holding up their copy of Botro. Botro, I'm pronouncing it badly. And then day 2, on the 11th, on the 3rd day of November, I went to 1, 2, 3. Oh, I miscounted. No, 6 schools. All kinds of different things going on, every single school. And one of them, actually, there was it was on TV, the news. It was an item on the news. Then the day 3, there was the closing ceremony of the marathon, of the reading marathon. So the kids came there and prizes were given. And it was an interview which was hosted by NT. So that was another kind of, if it was a story, it was a perfect way to tell it. You know, NT came back to host this meeting live. She'd been the one involved in the Meet the Author virtual meeting. Then I went out into the country on a Sunday to meet Genghis Khan. One of the biggest statues I've ever seen in my life, where you get this amazing view of the countryside, and you can go up to the top, obviously, you know, with climbing some stairs inside the statue. But even on that day, it was a Sunday, I was going to a school. Kids were coming on a Sunday to do these activities. It was the holiday period. You know, these kids, when they came to the reading marathon closing ceremony, the kids in their school, it was already holiday. There was a week's holiday, and they were coming into the school. That's the level of enthusiasm that I was met with. You know, it was quite incredible. The Ministry of Education representative came I met this person. I realized how maybe I should have dressed a bit better. I went there and realized, oh my God, you know, maybe you should have worn something a bit. But they asked the same question that the kids were asking: how come, you know, a story about a Mongolian character? And then I went on day 6, I went to a place which I thought was really amazing called the Loud Library. And that's when I started to get this idea of involving the reader. They were all clutching copies of Botro. And so I had a session with them about an hour and a half, where I started to talk about, what do you want Botro to do next? You know, and they came up with lots and lots of ideas. What they wanted Botro to do, where they wanted Botro to go. Also comments about the first story, which obviously I stored in my shell-like ear to make sure that I took those on board when I regraded the story as it is now. As you can see, speaking in circles, speaking to kids. This Loud Library is incredible. This is something which is irresistible to kids, this environment, because the rule is you have to make a noise. You know, it's libraries normally associated with, you know, silence, and you make a noise. But in the process of going there, they meet, they have something to eat, something to drink, they do their homework, they also read. And there are lots of little spaces, interesting spaces, comfortable spaces where they can do so in privacy, or they can do with other people, other kids, you know. So I was astonished by this place called the Loud Library, and I spent the whole afternoon here myself, you know, exploring it. It was absolutely beautiful. The whole concept, even the name, you know, when it was first mentioned to me, I thought, Loud Library, Loud Library. You know, what's that all about, you know? Maybe it's something that exists a lot in Asia, but certainly in Europe, I've never heard of such a concept. And this would astonish me even more the next day. The last day, effectively, I did a talk to teachers. But before that, I went to a place called the Magic Box. And as you see, there are kids in there, they're reading Botro. But this is the Magic Box. And they are old lorry containers, which, if you think about it, in the cold weather conditions of November in Mongolia, they're perfectly kind of insulated. They're nice and warm. They're cozy because they have to be, obviously, with the heat. They have to keep the heat in the container, whatever it may be, to sort of transport things. So they're abandoned lorry containers and are used as spaces where kids can hang out, keep warm, do their homework, and again read. There are bookshelves full of books. And they sit there on these cushions. And in fact, you can see on the picture on the left, you can see a kid clutching a book there. And so I went to visit them. So it's an interesting space because it's so confined. It's comfortable enough, but when someone new comes in, they were a bit kind of shy, a bit nervous with me. But I could see that, like, as they were reading a little bit of it, they were kind of surprised and delighted that they could understand something from this book, because all of the other books were in Mongolian. There weren't any readers in there, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't see any in English. There wasn't any literature in English. And so this again kind of reinforced this kind of idea in me that I've got to carry on writing Botro, and I've got to make sure that when Botro comes out in its kind of a book form, so to speak, it has to be graded so that kids like this can read it and be even more delighted that they can actually read it, that actually they can understand pretty much what's going on with Botro, with her adventures and everything in Italy. So these kinds of things just helped me to sort of understand what I needed to do, when I got back home. I needed to grade the text and I decided to an A2 level. A2 level, so kind of like a pre-intermediate type of level, 800 words, head words, that kind of thing. I wanted to sort of, at that moment, as it first, because I didn't have time to grade it properly, there were grammar features which were too complex, which probably could have been understood through the context, but it was harder work, to get through. So I wanted to grade it. That was the first thing. I wanted to add a song and a video. So basically, I added a song. Anybody who knows me knows that I like to make a song for every story I write. And this song is called Butterfly. And they were already singing it when I went to Mongolia. Some of the kids were singing the song because I'd already kind of sent it to Lingos before I went to Mongolia. And they were reading out the lyrics as well. They were reading the lyrics out, which was interesting to hear. And then they were singing it, or at least listening to it. And then having now experienced a little bit of Mongolia, I could actually add some bits that were authentic about Mongolia, which was nice. Not too much, because Botro was still a character who didn't know much about the country she was born in, knew things secondhand, really. Was too young the last time she was in Mongolia to remember very much. But my experiences, like in the original story of Botro, she is eating a Mongolian dish with her friend from school, and called okay, you're going to correct me here, Tuya, but something like bot. It's called bot. It's written B-U-Z-Z. No, B-W-Z.
Boats.
Anyway, sorry, Tuya?
Boats.
Bot.
Boats,
Okay,
yes.
and they looked a bit, they look at the dumplings with a lot of meat inside them. They're very tasty. If you're not vegetarian, you probably like these dumplings. But like, when I tried them, of course, the first thing I wanted to try when I visited Mongolia was this dish, because I got my character eating this stuff. I wanted to eat it as well. And so I ate it, and I made the big mistake that everybody makes with bot, which is, I think, when their first time, because I watched other people eating it, picking it up, and then taking a bite of it. So I took a bite, and the gravy inside spurted onto my jumper, which I think was white, which was perfect. I can't remember. But anyway, it was a big disaster. And then I was told that you have to sort of drink the gravy inside. You bite a tiny hole, drink the gravy, and then eat it. So of course I put that in the story. This is just a little example of how the being there kind of has informed me, not just about the sequel, but about also the story that I'd already written. And I also added bonus material, including an extra story, which is called What Happens Next, because Botra's favorite question of all, she's a very curious girl, is what happens next? That's her favorite question. So I thought, let's put another little story in there, which is called What Happens Next. So I endeavored to sort of do all these things, and I've been doing that right until like a few days ago, basically getting it all ready for printing and making it available basically to readers. And that's where we are right now at this point, basically. The story is ready in its new kind of form to be shared with readers in Mongolia. And it's been it's been an amazing journey. I think that really what I'm excited about as well is to keep in touch with the schools that I visited, which I'm doing already. You know, in an indirect way by writing to them and sharing things with them on social media with the school, because I'd like to sort of have this kind of relationship with the kids where they are involved in making the sequel and I don't quite know what form this is going to take yet, whether I'm going to send them a chapter and ask them what they think about it, or whether I'm going to say, okay, Botra's here now, what's going to happen to her? Or, you know, I'm not sure yet, but I think it's a wonderful opportunity because they are really they invested a lot in this story. You know, they're kind of interested in it, engaged in it, and it's their story. It's a story about a Mongolian girl, you know, and what struck me is that they really were touched by this, you know, that there's a Mongolian character. So this is my little story. These are my holiday snaps I wanted to share with you. I can actually go out now because that's my last. I can stop sharing and get back to the main. Okay, I've stopped sharing now. Is that right? Okay.
Yep. So, you were able to stop sharing.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm back here now.
Yep,
Okay,
you're back.
Yeah, and yeah. So that's basically where I'm at, and what I really want to do is to be in a place in 2 years' time when we meet in Osaka, I think it is, where I can talk about what actually does happen next, and how we engage the readers, involve the readers in the sequel, because I intend to write five more stories of Botro. So because I really want to see how they do this, if they move from one story to the next. You know, they read the first one, so they want to read the second one, and to do this kind of narrow read, give them this kind of narrow reading kind of possibility, let's say, where they read a series. And it's something I've always wanted to do with Egghead, but it's more difficult for me to do that because Egghead is not mine. I mean, in the sense it's my story, but of course there's a publisher that has the rights to it. So it's more difficult for me to tread, to do exactly what I want to do with Egghead. With Botro, I can do it because it's my story. I published it myself and in collaboration with Lingors. So basically, we can do what we want. We can experiment in this way with this story and try to involve the reader in a way that's maybe hasn't been done before, or maybe it has. I don't know, but I'm not aware of it happening like this. So, what form exactly it takes is still to be seen. But the aim would be for Lingors and myself to go to Osaka with what we found out, basically, to collect data about it, to see the level of engagement and get the feedback, and just get some data that we can share about this experience of Botro. And maybe by the time I get to Osaka, I might be able to pronounce Botro correctly. That would be another objective of mine. But yeah, so that's my story. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you
So,
for inviting me.
in Osaka, I really look forward to both seeing how Botro's developed and the process for it. But with the engagement that you've talked about in Mongolia,
Yeah,
I can imagine maybe by that time there's even some fan fiction that has started to spring up, where the people who have been kind of touched by Botro have started to add to the story. So
yes, that's exciting, that idea. They've certainly contributed with artwork so far. They've been doing that. A lot of the artwork with Botro is there. In fact, I don't know. Actually, some classroom walls were peppered with drawings of Botro and the scenes that and sentences and phrases and things that they like from the story and things like that. But yeah, that would be amazing if that happened. And even like to get them involved in the endings as well, and like make alternative endings to the story, or there's potential for that as well. Potential for. So my idea would be like, to sort of share that in Osaka, or even before. It depends how quickly everything happens, but but I think Osaka would be a good kind of realistic target, let's say, to be able to sort of talk about Botro and see what's happened to her as she grows, because 5 stories is in 2 years is is quite a challenge, but it's easier than 21 in 6 weeks. But it's something that I really myself as well I'd like to do, because I've never actually written sequels like that before. So basically that would be an interesting challenge for me as well, to do that, and then to see how Botro as well is received outside of Mongolia, which obviously Paul might be have a hand in helping us to find out about that as well, because the first story is about a little girl who, she's really curious, she's very positive, she's very clever and enterprising, and she's got lots of questions, but really the question she wants the answer to is, what are the ingredients of happiness? How can I be happy? Why am I unhappy some of the time and really unhappy? And so she goes around asking everybody she knows what this secret is. How can I be happy? And eventually she finds an answer that is satisfactory to her at the end of the story. She finds an answer that makes her happy, that she's satisfied with. And in doing this story basically goes through all of these, the philosophical, not all of them, but many of the philosophical arguments that there have been over the millenniums, let's say, over the thousands and thousands of years about happiness, and how you can achieve it, how you can attain it, and in a very simple kind of format, basically, obviously. In the story, she speaks to her best friend, and her best friend says, well, I think I'm not sure, but I'm definitely going to be happy when I get my new bicycle at Christmas. And that's one of these ideas that always we humans have, that when we get to this point, then we'll be happy and all of our problems will be solved. And of course they aren't. And so it goes through those things. But of course now I've got to develop Botro in a way where she's moving on to other questions and other challenges and doing other things. And I wanted to make Botro to be female, because Egghead is, when I wrote Egghead, I was unaware of what I was doing, really. There were too many boys in Egghead, and I didn't really think of that. I was just, and so I wanted to address the balance and Botro is very kind of lots of female characters, basically. There are 3 generations of women in the story. There's the Botro, there's her mother and her grandmother, and they are the 3 main characters that pull the story together. So that will be another challenge as well, because when I write from that perspective, I always have to ask friends to help me to make sure that I'm I'm on track and I'm not being stereotypical, and I'm actually doing a good job of writing a female character. I had two or three people I asked them to help me out with that. Female friends who I trust.
Well,
Basically,
we've got about 20 other people here, actually more than 20 now. So if you have a question or something you'd like to speak with Michael about, I think we've got plenty of time before we get into the business for the special interest group. So you can either unmute your microphone, or if you would like me to read your question for you, you can type it into the chat.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll open up the chat box now. Just see if.
First one from me, if that's okay. I would really like to be able to purchase Botoro, but you have things listed on Amazon.com, but not Amazon.co.jp. So is there any chance of you doing on-demand things on Amazon Japan, with including Egghead the movie, which I got from America? But
yeah, you got from America. Who am I speaking to? Sorry, because I can't see.
Sandra here from Kyoto.
Yeah, Sandra. Yeah, this is a learning curve as well, because of course I'm trying to sort of work out how these things kind of function with Egghead the movie. I made it available on demand with Ingram Sparks as well, which has got like about 40,000 online bookstores around the world. So they wouldn't be just Amazon, but it should. I mean, I thought that it was available in Japan, but obviously it's not. So I have to sort of look into that and make sure it happens. Yeah, I'm sorry about that it's not available yet. I mean, it's something that I'm finding out by asking people around the world if they can find it or not. I've been asking friends like in places like Hungary, Brazil, to find out if they can get hold of it. But if we keep in touch in some way, I can find out and give you a progress report on that.
That would be really good, because especially if you're wanting to continue the series with the Mongolian experience, it would be nice if we could get print-on-demand copies of those as well. Anything in the future that you produce.
Yeah, it would be wonderful. If we can keep in touch about it, like through email or social media or whatever suits you, because what I'll do even today is try to get onto that to find out, because I know that Japan is a special case with Amazon. There's something different about Amazon Japan compared to other kinds of Amazon, but also I'd be interested to know the price, because to make sure that the price is in line with the price in elsewhere, because I think somebody told me a colleague, a friend who lives in Japan, Sophie, who lives in Nagoya, Sophie Muller. She told me that it was this enormously exaggerated price, really, really expensive. I was thinking, that really kind of freaked me out. I thought, I don't want people to think that I'm, I've asked for this ridiculously high price, because the whole point of me doing this is that the price I can kind of manage. The worst comes to the worst, but I just make sure you get hold of the copies, in some way, in some other way.
I was going to say, Paul Michael Lacey, who's here at the moment, publishes on demand his graded readers through Amazon. So perhaps, Paul, you might have a comment about that. You certainly know more about that than I do.
Sure, Sandra. Yeah, by the way, Michael, I was really impressed with what you were doing with your readers in Mongolia. I'm a big fan of Egghead.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Excuse me. About publishing on Amazon, I'm a little bit new to that as well. But the printing cost that Amazon charges is higher in Japan by quite a bit. So that's so they're taking more money from you when you obviously sell your books in Japan. I don't really know, but there is a setting I'm not sure if you're doing this yourself, but there's a setting on Amazon when you publish that says where do you expect to sell most of your books. And I think if you, for example, click on one version or one country of Amazon, that sort of tells you sort of a bit more accurate. I think if you selected that to Japan, Sandra will be able to get that probably, you know, within a day or two. But of course, that cuts out your other markets might be getting it later. But to be honest, I'm not really sure. Amazon's maybe a little bit deliberately vague in this sense. So I wish I could be more help.
No, thank you. I mean, if we find out anything, we can keep in touch with each other. If I find out something, I'll let you know.
Sure, likewise.
Yeah, because like because it is a challenge, and it is something that I released the movie, but it's the first time I know now for certain that it's not available in Japan at the moment, which is really like a bummer. Let's say that's bad news. So I've got to sort of get onto it. It's actually like I've got like people who help me in the UK that with these things because I'm a complete disaster at this. So I'll get onto them and ask them about it to see if they can work something out and get in touch with you, Sandra, about it, and you as well, obviously, Paul, if I find out something. But it should be available in theory in all these other Egghead the movie, at least. If you Google it, hopefully something will come up where there will be another online bookseller in Japan. I imagine, because with 40,000 online bookstores, some of them will be Japanese, or maybe not.
Don't think so. I did look around, and that's why I ended up getting it from Amazon.com. I just happened to be doing another order from there, so I just sort of tacked it on because the postage, of course, is quite expensive.
Yeah, I got off my chair when a friend from California said, "I'm just trying to buy this book, and it costs." I'm trying to buy Egghead the movie, and it costs, because she was trying to buy it with her Italian account, so it was being sent from the States to Italy. Yeah, and it was £30.
So you can get it, but it costs more, and it takes. How long did it take, Sandra? Maybe about a month.
No, actually, unfortunately, it's quite quick. That's because all of the orders from Amazon.com that I've received, especially since the pandemic, they all go via a very expensive courier. You can't really get them through any cheap options. So basically, whatever the price of the thing that you want to buy, double it. And that'll account for the postage. So yeah,
I've got to get onto this. Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's a priority. Yeah, because otherwise it's very frustrating for everybody. I think if people like it seems to be smooth. Yeah, but basically in Europe it seems to be fairly straightforward, and that's probably because I've clicked that switch. I'm doing it from Italy. I'm setting the price in Italy, and so obviously it gets more complicated. If go outside the continent of Europe, probably that's the problem. So something I can definitely work on.
That would be
yeah. Just want to say, if you go to Amazon Japan right now, it shows up. It says it's out of stock. You can buy the paperback for 2,275 yen. You can buy a used for 1,900 yen, and you can buy a collectible version for 8,649 yen. I wonder what that is.
8,000
for a collectible version of Egghead the movie.
I wonder what would that be. I'm in my bubbles. I mean,
it's probably just a setting that someone can say they're selling something that's a collectible. I don't know if it's a verified. Yeah, if anybody goes down, I can share my screen if you want.
A collectible version. They're just people trying. Yeah, there are people, I think, with this that actually sell it. They sell Egghead the movie. They sell the book. And then if someone buys it from them, they print it and then send it. So the price is really high. They speculate in that way with all books, I think, being like a kind of intermediary. A collectible. What would that?
It sounds like someone is flipping the book.
By Michael. Okay, if they've got hold of a book maybe that I've signed, maybe that could count as a collectible. Yeah. Because I have signed quite a few, but mostly in Mongolia.
Yeah, he doesn't say that it's signed. I think it's just someone who knows a book is hard to get, and so he's hiking the price.
Ah, okay. Well, I certainly didn't want to make, the last thing I wanted was to make a book that was hard to get. You know, I want it to be easy to read and easy to get, these two things. Like, so basically, thanks for telling me, because you know, it's difficult for me to approach people to ask them, because it sounds like I'm selling the book, but it's not. I just want to know if it's available. So if I write to someone and ask them, it's because I've got a close enough relationship to them that they know that I'm not trying to sort of pitch or something, or like I've got a good friend in Hungary, and I asked her, he said, can you find the book? You know, just so that I get some kind of idea of the exposure and the price as well. Because if I make a search on Google, the price is automatically, the delivery costs are added to it, and it kind of, I'm not sure exactly what the real cost is to someone who actually lives in that country. So this would be wonderful. These are kind of problems I never foresaw. I mean, I took this decision to publish by myself just simply because I wanted to have the freedom to write what I wanted and to be able to make the book available to whoever wanted it. That was really that. So basically, this second reason, you know, at the moment, I still haven't got it worked out to make it available in this way, and I really would like to get it worked out, you know. And that's another story in itself, you know, how I came to this decision where I thought I want to start writing stories and publishing them myself, you know, rather than for a publisher. You know, I think, you know, there was one time when I was persuaded, let's say, to change the ending of a story, and I've always regretted that. I went along with it, and I changed the ending. And if you change the ending of a story, you have to change everything, you know, because it's not just like, okay, tag on a totally different ending to make everything consistent. You have to go back and back and back and back. And it was a different story at the end, and like a story I didn't want to write. And so that kind of helped me to make my mind up. One day, you know, when I can, I'm gonna write my own stories for myself. I'm going to publish them myself, so I get to decide what I want to write. And Bottles Be Question is exciting for me because this is actually what's happening now. You know, I'm able to sort of pursue this. I've got another story coming out in March as well, totally unrelated, called The Drum, which I'm really proud of. I think it might be the best thing I've ever written, and like that's coming out. So I would like to get that all sorted out so that also people in Japan, if they want to read The Drum, they can read The Drum. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Someday I'd really love to read one of your stories about somebody who's become a writer and has gone through all of those different experiences and making books that weren't really exactly what they wanted to make, and finally getting to that, The Drum.
Yes. Yes.
Because I'm sure that could inspire a lot of future writers as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, to be able to sort of share my experiences and you know, and it's a lot about as well alliances and working with other people as well, like Andy, who's not here today. I think Andy Boone I work with a lot. We talk through things a lot together because we know exactly what it's. Also, Trina's not here today. Is she, Trina, here? She's Trina as well, and that's really helpful. But like yeah, it would be nice to sort of share these things, so that, you know, people don't have to make the same, I wouldn't say mistakes, because it's all part of the whole process anyway, you know. And to be honest with you, the reason I write is because I love doing it. These stories, it's not like it's never going to make me a rich person writing stories. It's never going to make, but like it's something that, you know, just I really love doing, and so it's not really mistakes anyway. I'm not really worried, or it's not driven by fear of what I do. It's
Michael, can I just ask you something?
Yeah.
Sort of related to what Pat just said. Maybe your sequel to Egghead could be the challenges that person has in writing a story and becoming a writer. Maybe that could be the sequel.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
But sorry, I also love how you've decided to do what I did and move away from a publisher and independently publish your stories. There's so much more creative freedom there, and it's so much more rewarding. And I also love that you've decided to sort of make this into a series of books, because my readers, a lot of time that they spend a lot of time trying to find a book that they like, and then when they finally find something that they like and they get engaged with, then it's sort of over in 3,000, 4,000 words, and they're sort of saying, "Where's the next one? I spent all this time finding this book, and now 40 minutes later, I have to find another book."
Oh yeah.
So the series is just such a great thing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all that.
Well, I think it's something that can be replicated elsewhere as well. Like, wouldn't it be great to have like in fact, this Tom's here, isn't he? Like a reader about an Indonesian boy or an Indonesian girl, or a Vietnamese boy, a Vietnamese girl, and like as a kind of a way of encouraging kids to read. This is if Tom's here and he wants to say anything at this point, he's got opinions about this as well. But wouldn't it be amazing as this could be like a template for other stories like this, which can introduce kids to this whole idea, and they can be like sitting there thinking, oh, I can read this, I'm into this, and then go through that whole process that we know so well of getting into a story and then getting to that point where they've got to get to the end of, they've got to find out what happens next. So it could be something and it's something that I would be happy to be involved in, not just with Mongolia, but also with other countries as well, as writing stories specifically for a specific target, let's say. I've always been astonished, as I said, in Bali, by the fact that, there's me, 50, in my guy in his 50s, but a story can connect me to a little girl from Mongolia who's like 14, 15. And only stories can do that. I really do think, there are very few things that can do that can actually make that connection through generations, through culture, that can bridge that gap, to coin the phrase, which is the title of the Congress that most of us went to in Indonesia, in Denpasar. Only stories really, I think, can do that, and it's just amazing. So to be involved in that and to go into these classrooms in Mongolia and to see just like you could almost touch it, the feeling of like excitement that there was, and the degree of involvement. The ones that read Egghead, that were engaging with Egghead, you could tell they were trying to say things to me to make me feel better, because they still see me as that character, and they want to help me. They want to give me. There's a drawing that I got sent today, actually, where there's a drawing of me. They've made a portrait of me, and they've written all these positive affirmations around my head, you are special. You are things that have come from the story, which they're just trying to reassure me that for them, I'm still Egghead, and so this kind of power, this is incredible that a story can do this. So with Botra, it has got this potential. I think it's captured their imagination. What's Botra going to do next? Is a question that engages them, which they're thinking about it. And they're giving me feedback, and in the Loud Library, when I was speaking to them, I got them in groups to think about what possible endings there could be. What happens next? What does she do after this? Now she's found happiness, what's the next step? And so it could be a little boy called I don't know, it could be a little boy called with an Indonesian name. It could be a little boy with a Vietnamese with a Vietnamese name. And I mean, it could even be something that just gets kids. Why not? Gets kids into reading. It could be a home run book, because it's something that they can automatically connect with. So it can be one of those books, which we call a home run book, which is a book that actually changes their relationship to reading. That's the potential. If we spend enough That's why I wanted to get Botra back and give her, polish her a little bit, so that, you know, when those kids in those containers read that story, they'll be able to have that feeling that I can understand, you know, I can understand this empowering feeling, you know. It's a book in English, and I'm reading it, and I've read it, you know. Where's the next one? Yeah, exactly as Paul was saying. Where's the next one? Well, and to be able to produce that would be amazing. Absolutely amazing. What happens next? In fact, with Botra's big question, I've added the first 2 pages of the next story. So if a kid asks this, they've actually got the first 2 pages, which I've committed myself to the extent I can't change that now. I've already got the first 2 pages. And there's a little question in there at the end of these 2 pages. Where do you think, you know, what happens next question for them? Already I've kind of got that in place, so that maybe will be asking that question when they read it. It's going to be available, the new story, in Mongolia in the next few days, I think. That's right, isn't it, Tui? It's going to be available around Mongolia, so hopefully they'll respond to that question. So that's really exciting. And when you say, Paul, it's like, yeah, absolutely, that freedom. It's to be able to write what you want to write, what you feel is right, and not like what is, you know, often with publishers, what they will do, they will think about the bottom line. They will think, and understandably, I mean, I'm not criticizing it, but they will obviously think about the implications of, well, this story might upset a reader, or this, like, the reason I had to change the ending to one story is because the ending was deemed to be too hard. An ending, they wanted to make it lighter, the ending, but I don't think that would have been the case. I think that kids can deal with sad endings. I mean, kids love sad endings to films and stories. And if you look at Japanese stories and manga and things like that, they're often, their endings are quite, you know, brutal, I think, you know. And this wasn't particularly brutal, but they just wanted to sort of soften the edges a lot, because thinking of the commercial implications of it, I suppose, you know. Obviously, there are different challenges with writing without, you know, I've got people who do the copy editing work, that do the editing work. Yes, you need a support network. You need people with you who can do those kinds of jobs. You can't do it on your own. And I've got some brilliant illustrators who are helping me out as well. Young, just come out of university, full of ideas. And the freedom of being able, with the movie, for example, the freedom of being able to, stop me if I'm going on too long, but the freedom of being able to work with them in real time is a luxury which normally you don't get with publishers. The publishers don't let you speak to the illustrators. You have to tell the illustrator what you want through the publisher. So it gets diluted. Whereas when you have working with the illustrator directly, it's fascinating, because you tell them what you want, then they tell you how they can do it. That gives you more ideas for the story. And it's kind of a feedback loop that's amazing. That's what happened with Egghead the movie. Is that their illustrations gave me ideas for the story. It wasn't just one-way thing. And it was something that was really beneficial. And the way I got round, right, Paul's quite right, a sequel is a great idea. And I tried to write a sequel for Egghead, and I have written a sequel, but it had to be a sequel where I had to take the story way, way, way forward in time, so that it's not anything like the first one, because then otherwise there might be copyright. I'll be plagiarizing myself. The publisher, there was all kinds of issues like that I had to be careful about. So Egghead in Egghead the movie, he's a grown man, Egghead the movie, basically. And but I won't tell you any more than that if you haven't read it. But that's why there is this massive jump, because I had to avoid, with Botra I can do what I want. It can be the next day, you know, if I wanted to be. and if I think it's a good idea, and if the readership want that, if I can kind of keep this connection with students like this. Of course, the students grow up, so the students change as well. You know, the 14-year-olds who are enthusiastic about this, as we know, if any of us who have had kids, you know, we know that that kind of age, they change quite quickly, what their interests are, what their tastes are. But, you know, to have that kind of connection, that kind of energy that I felt there was just incredible. And it was remarkable. And I miss that contact with them already after 1 month. I miss Botro as well, because I don't know if Paul would agree with me, but when you write a character, you start to miss them when you finish the story. And you want them back in some way. It's a piece of yourself that you are, you know, putting out there on the page. And you kind of get a bit sad when it gets towards the end. At least I do. I feel like, you know, so to write a sequel kind of is makes me happy, because, you know, I can keep hold of Botro a bit longer. Yeah, maybe that's just me. I don't know. But I do get this kind of feeling of melancholy, a bit of sadness, and I actually even don't reread stories that I've written because it makes me sad. So I have to, while I'm making the story and checking it and everything, but once I've written it, often usually I don't. But with Botro, I will have to read it for the compatibility, for the coherence, for the story, and like and because I know that she's still around, it won't make me sad. But that's maybe me being soppy. I don't know. That's just my kind of relationship with stories is a bit like that.
Oh, Michael, it looks like Paul Goldberg has something he'd like to ask you.
Yeah, if you don't mind, a comment, a quick question, or a longer question. My comment, just want to agree with what Paul Maclise said. Maclise said that, yeah, I think it's great having graded readers about the same characters, the same story expanded. Students get intimidated by a very long graded reader, but if they can read 3 or 4 short graded readers about basically a continuing story, a series or serial, it's great. Paul's been doing that. I think I Talk, You Talk. It's really, yeah, I think students really are attracted to that. If they like the story, they'll read the others. Quick question, Michael. I saw you put up a bunch of cover images. I was just wondering where you had those done. Was that done in Mongolia, or you had them done?
The ones with day 1, day 2.
It was a slide. You just had like 20 books, different, like one of them was Control Alt Delete, and one of your slides that you showed us.
That was done by Lingos. They commissioned the artwork. Yeah.
Okay. And my longer question is, have you considered doing workshops for students on how to write their own graded readers?
Would be wonderful. I would love to do that. I would love to do some work on storytelling with the kids. Yeah. And like sometimes it happens that kids kind of give me stories that they've written like at the end of a session, but it'd be great to sort of make that into a, and kids come up to me, like I was in Bari in the south of Italy last week, because I do travel a lot with particularly with Egghead. I was there last week. It's the southernmost tip of Italy. And there was a girl who said, I write stories, and she shared this with me, the story that she'd written. She told me a little bit about it. You know, so there is, I mean, it would be very empowering as well to sort of, because, yeah, ultimately, you know, the message is that we're all storytellers, you know. So, yeah, I would be very interested in that. Absolutely.
Okay, I can connect. There's a teacher in Japan who did it with his junior high school students, and they did a remarkable job. Although it was a lot more work than I think he expected. He only had 12 students. It was his top 12 students, the top 12, you know, the highest level class. And it took several months, and it was a lot of effort on his part to have them come up with stories that, you know, that they would be proud of. But he said it was well worthwhile.
I've had 2 experiences of it, with one with Indonesia, with a teacher called Ariana, the surname I cannot reproduce, but with her university students, but they were making like a comic stories, and I followed them with that. a little bit. And then with KidLink, they have like, I don't know if you're aware of KidLink, but they have a story writing workshop. And but that was just a video that I made to give encouragement and some advice, little tidbits of advice, you know, but it wasn't like I wasn't following them or anything, or doing a workshop. But that would be a great idea. Yeah, absolutely. Very empowering, an opportunity to get some writers of the future, basically.
Yeah, and we had actually put some of the students' books on X Reading for a little while, and the students were excited that students around the world were reading and commenting on their books. So it was,
yeah, a lot of my students in university were reading those books and enjoyed them.
Yeah. And yeah, and there were students, you know, I heard from the teacher who said that students came to class and just like screaming, somebody in Ecuador read my book. Somebody in Mongolia, like dozens of students in Mongolia read my book. You know, this is a junior high school student in Tokyo. We're just, you know, thrilled by it. So the teacher said that was the biggest, he'd done the writing project before without putting them on X Reading. They were just, you know, done it in school. And he said by having them given to such a wide audience and the feedback the students got, it made them so much more motivated. And that the next year, many more students wanted to become involved in this writing project.
Yeah, I think it's all part of this process of feeling this freedom, these kinds of ideas, these kinds of things. I feel more open to them now than when I was maybe more tied to a publisher writing a story for a publisher. And that's why I've kind of resisted the kind of offers that I have had some offers to write stories for a publisher. Mostly they're adaptations, because the conventional wisdom amongst most publishers is that the original stories are not profitable, and that it's best to basically adapt to original classic stories. And I just thought I just want to write original stories. You know, that's what I don't want to do any more adaptations for now. This is how I feel about it. So, and I can do that because I'm not just thinking of that bottom line, or not thinking of what's most profitable or what's least profitable. I'm just following what I want to do, you know, what I think is a good thing to do, a nice thing to do, a useful thing to do. So yeah, that's basically that feeling I've had of this last year has been great. I've been really enjoying what I've been doing, and I think that's why I thought I could do the reading marathon and get those 21 stories out there on that reading marathon, because I could just do what I wanted. The linguist just said, whatever you want to write about, you know, and that was nice. I'd never been told that before. You know, but you know, it's never happened, and so I enjoyed that. You know, getting up in the morning and wondering, you know, what was going to come out of this, you know. And of course, there are all kinds of, like, I think the whole process of the app as well was, and the reading marathon itself the reading marathon is an interesting kind of idea, and I just wonder if it could even get involved in that in Europe some point, sponsoring some kind of reading marathon in the future. Just like an idea, just like general idea, that maybe it would be a great way of getting students in Italy, for example, interested in reading, you know, exposing them to readers a bit more, getting them engaged in a kind of reading marathon activity, you know.
Yeah,
might be something interesting.
Yeah, I'd be happy. We can discuss later. I'd be happy to work with you. I mean, we've been very successful in Mongolia, but that's because Lingors has done such a remarkable job of promoting and organizing these. But if we can find a way of doing it in Italy or other parts of Europe, I think would be nice.
Yes, I think that's another thing that we can like see what's happening and closely monitor. But certainly that the reading marathon has generated this enthusiasm, and made kids aware of what they're reading and how much they're reading, and checking their progress, and seeing the progress they're making. You know, I think that it's kind of like help them, like as with anything that's successful, like they're not just looking up and thinking, oh God, I've got to get to this target. They're looking down to see how far they've come. And that's very motivating. And I think these kinds of things, that's what they do. You're not just looking up, oh God, I've got to get to this by the end of the semester or the end of the term. I was like, oh gosh, I've really improved.
That's good. Tuya, do you know how many students are in your current marathon? I think that this is your biggest one ever. Do you know how many students are currently reading?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Warm greetings from Mongolia. It's very cold outside. Mine is 25 right now.
Minus 25.
Inside, yeah, inside is really warm. Currently, there are 2 different marathons we are running. One is supported from the government. Second is the team marathon, which will start next week. Current student numbers is closely to 4,000 students from different classes. It's between from 6 to 6 to 12 grade, and it's finishing by today. And from tomorrow we will start the team marathon, which can everybody can build their team from 5 people, and they start to read, and we will just have it around for 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks we will have the results between adults. That's the current marathon.
Yeah, amazing.
Very impressive. Yeah, really impressive. Enjoy, That's fantastic. They're big numbers, yeah. You know,
I think so. We've had Michael with us for a little bit over an hour, lots of good questions back and forth, and I'm sure you might have 1 or 2 more left in you. But before it gets too late, as part of an NPO, we do have to do some of this business at our annual general meeting every year. So before we get into the kind of the not as engaging part of today's meeting, let's give Michael another warm round of applause for his gracious time that he's spent with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you. Pat, do you want me to? So, shall I hang around for the end until the end of the AGM if there are other questions?
If that's okay with you, that would be greatly appreciated. But I do understand you're in a different time zone.
Yeah, it's okay. I just have to sort of maybe if I just switch my mic and camera off for a little while, because I've got to work out with family what's happening in terms of lunch. Italian lunch is the kind of you know, it's like the thing. That's Sunday lunch is like the most important moment of the week for Italian. Not so I just got to make sure that I've got a pass from that, and because then I can hang around for a little bit longer, which I would love to do.
Okay.
Italy at the moment is 12:17.
All right.
So lunch is 1 o'clock, but it's not here. I mean, it's at the family kind of my in-laws' place. So I'll just make sure that I've got like the pass for this week, so that I don't have to go.
All right.
Okay.
But if you do have to duck out, we certainly understand.
Yeah, no problem. No, I'm sure that my wife will understand. I'd see.